What's going on, my Jack brother? Coach Scott here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to reduce your hunger to make it easier to stick with your diet. Now, the first step is to identify why you're experiencing that hunger to begin with. And we're not talking about the typical subtle hunger that you experience, especially towards the end of the day when you're in a calorie deficit. We're talking about that hunger that is out of the ordinary, that strikes you hard and makes you feel ravenous, like you want to chew someone's arm off. One of my coaching clients, Frank, was experiencing that kind of hunger the other day, and he reached out to let me know that he crushed today's workout, but he was feeling so hungry that day for some reason. Now, I could have looked at that and said, well, you know what, depending on the workout, like there's times where you crush an intense back workout or a leg workout, you can experience an increase in appetite because that workout was more demanding. I could also look at it that, he's been in a calorie deficit consistently for the past month. It could just be a little bit of diet fatigue there. But the first question I always ask my clients whenever they come to me and say, man, I'm feeling so hungry that day is, how was your sleep? And how much water have you drinking today? The reason I ask those questions is because 9 times out of 10, whenever I ask them, the client reports back that their sleep has sucked and they haven't drank much water throughout the day. Sure enough, in Frank's case, his sleep had not been that great for the past few days. The night before, he got very little sleep, and he's been so busy with work and running around with the kids that he hasn't been drinking, hasn't been keeping up with his water intake. From personal experiences, whenever I find myself mindlessly rummaging through the cupboards, looking for treats that I know aren't there, or I keep going back and forth to the fridge, I'll open it up, looking through it, maybe I missed something the last time. Maybe there is something in here that I forgot about, knowing fully well that it's not there. In each of those cases, it's because I didn't get a good night's sleep the night before. And oftentimes it's a combination of not getting enough sleep and not keeping up on my water intake throughout the day. Now, it's a damn good thing in those moments that I don't keep treats or temptations in the house because I would definitely devour them in a heartbeat. And oftentimes in those situations, I find myself eating stuff that I don't even really enjoy just for the sake of eating it, even though up to that point, I have eating more than enough that should satisfy me. And there's research to back up that lack of sleep has an impact on your appetite and your hunger. Great book, Why We Sleep. I did a video on this in the past. Highly recommend it, especially the audio version, because so much research and studies in here. It can be a bit dry at times and tough to get through. But one of the studies, it was a metabolic ward study, I believe, that showed that those who were sleep deprived consumed 300 calories more throughout the day. There's another study in here that showed that they consumed 600 calories more per day. So just getting a lack of sleep is going to increase your hunger, increase your appetite, and lead you to eat more. Think about it there. Like that's almost, that happens every single day that you're consuming 300 to 600 calories more than if you were getting an adequate amount of sleep each and every night. That's a pound of fat loss right there that you could be experiencing if you just get your sleep in check. And I know for some people, your work schedule can make it very difficult to get an adequate amount of sleep. I know Frank is in a tough position with a sporadic work schedule, like his hours are kind of all over the place. But thing is, like in those situations, just try to make the most out of what you got and try not to delay sleep by doing some unproductive things that aren't serving you well, that you could be better served getting more sleep that evening. And if you are someone who has a great schedule, that you're able to get to sleep at a decent time and able to get at least 7 hours of quality sleep each and every night, preferably 8, even upwards of 9. I know my sweet spot is 8.5 hours. I definitely notice a difference for myself between 7 hours and 8.5 hours, even 7.5 hours and 8.5 hours. It's night and day in regards to my mental focus, my mental clarity, my mood, my productivity. And again, all in the hungry brain. It's unbelievable the impact that it has on just even our response when we're driving and our memory more than anything. So it is huge. I continue to drill home the importance of sleep, if at all possible. Prioritize it. Don't fight me on this at all. So many benefits to getting an adequate amount of sleep each and every night. And with water intake, I know for myself personally, if I go too long without having water, and I'm like really, really hungry, water is not going to satisfy me in that moment. If anything, like drinking water in that moment kind of makes me hungry. So I do recommend that you kind of space your water throughout the day. I kind of taper it off more towards the end of the day because I don't want it to have a negative impact on my sleep. But I drink a lot of water earlier in the day. Yes, I do have to get up and pee a lot. It is par for the course when it comes to that. But it is very helpful with managing hunger control and I'm not letting it go on for too long. And it can help your hunger if you're drinking water before your meal, like 20 minutes before a meal. Just pound a big glass of water, and that can help satiate you or fill up your stomach before you're eating and while you're eating as well. Now, like I said, 9 times out of 10, lack of sleep and dehydration are the two biggest culprits when it comes to experiencing that kind of intense abnormal hunger when you're going through a cutting phase, such as Frank experienced there. Other culprits are going too long between meals. I'm sure you found yourself in a situations where it's been a long time since you've eaten and you're preparing dinner and just snacking on little things here and there because you're so freaking hungry. Then by the time you get to the dinner meal, you're like, I consumed a whole meal's worth of calories just preparing this meal before I even ate my dinner. So again, a learning lesson there is to make sure that you are on top of like scheduling your meals throughout the day. You don't let yourself go too long between meals. I know some people, like if you enjoy the intermittent fasting approach, you find that having a smaller window, an eating window, makes you feel more satiated. You can eat bigger meals that make you feel fuller. That's great if it works for you. Just make sure that, because I've seen it backfire on a lot of people where they delay their first meal and then they're so freaking hungry by the time they finally eat that first meal that they eat way more than they should. So if you're gonna do intermittent fasting, just know yourself. Know how long you can go before you get to that point where you're like super ravenous and need to really pig out there. Another culprit when it comes to experiencing that kind of intense hunger are days where you find yourself eating more low volume foods, which tend to be highly processed foods. And unfortunately, those highly processed foods are manufactured in a way that makes our brain crave more and more and more. So those foods, they're not, when I say they're low in volume, is that it's a small portion size that's not going to fill your stomach up very much, but it's high in calorie and very freaking, it's one of the bigger temptations. Another great book that I have discussed on this channel in the past, The Hungry Brain, talks a lot about those temptations that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, and a lot of it does really come down to the highly processed foods. So not only are they high in calories and not satiating, they may satiate your taste buds, but they don't fill your stomach up very much, but they also encourage you to eat more and more and more of them. So another downside of having one of those days where you're consuming more than normal, low volume, highly processed foods is that those foods are often devoid of nutrients. So that hunger that you're experiencing, even though you've eaten enough that should satiate you, should fill you up, could just be your body's way of saying like, you need to eat more in order to satisfy our daily nutrient requirements. So the way to overcome that is to make sure that you are consuming mostly whole, natural, nutrient-rich foods throughout the day, foods that you enjoy, foods that you love, that do satiate you. And the benefit of consuming those foods is not only is it going to help meet your daily micronutrient, macronutrient requirements, allow you to feel your best, perform your best, give the best of yourself to the day, but the whole natural nutrient-rich foods are often larger in volume, so you can consume a larger portion size with fewer calories. A great example that would be veggies. I mean, you could load up on veggies. It's going to fill up your stomach and it not take up much of your daily calorie intake. And it's really important to make note of the foods that do satiate you. A great example would be one of my other coaching clients, Dean, who was eating bagels on a regular basis, even though he wasn't really enjoying bagels. It was more of a habit than anything. It's 300 calorie bagel. So I'm like, what other kind of swap can we make? And he really enjoys steel cut oats and berries. So like 2/3 cup of oats and frozen berries, 140 grams of berries, that's 300 calories right there. And that he enjoys that meal. It's satiating, it's greater in volume than the bagel was, and it's gonna satisfy his hunger for longer. It's gonna sit in his stomach longer and digest it a little bit longer. You got the fiber in the oats. It's gonna expand with the water that he's drinking with his meal and everything as well. So those kind of meals are satiating, but it's really important to make note of, like, some people find protein, like increasing their protein intake, 1 gram per pound of body weight to 1.2 grams per pound body weight. Some people really like to push it up to 1.5 grams per pound body weight. The more protein they have in their diet, if they have protein with each meal, they tend to be more satiated throughout the day. Whereas that doesn't work for some people. Some people they feel more satiated on carbs or fats. So you really need to know yourself and know the meals that satisfy you more, fill you up more, that are lower in calories, higher in volume, and taste great to you as well. Now into another culprit that I've seen bring about these intense feelings of hunger with my clients, and that is stress, which is an interesting one because with some clients, it reduces their appetite. They're not hungry at all. They're just struggle to eat when they're under stress. Whereas others, they will use food to help kind of cope with their stress. And oftentimes it just adds even more stress to the situation. So really important to become aware that you are stress eating and instead come up with other coping mechanisms to help manage your stress, whether it's to take a break, get out for a walk. Exercise is always great for coping with stress, and sleep will help manage your stress as well. Maybe you need to journal, maybe you need to talk with someone. So get better at developing stress management skills rather than using food as a coping mechanism, which just adds more stress to your life. And one more culprit that I see kind of bring about these unusual feelings of hunger is boredom. And it's always an interesting thing because like eating food isn't really going to satisfy that boredom. And in some situations, you're just watching TV at night when you could be going to bed, getting a great night's sleep, which is going to reduce your hunger the following day. Or if it's during the daytime, you could get out and actually do something that's going to overcome that feeling of boredom. You can actually live your life to the fullest, experience activities that bring joy to your day. So finding alternatives to that boredom, alternatives to coping with that boredom, rather than using food, which really doesn't help the situation and probably just is going to add more stress to your day as well. Just a vicious circle there. Now a quick recap to help reduce hunger and make it easier for you to stick with your diet. Number one, make sure you're getting an adequate amount of sleep each and every night. Number two, make sure you're staying hydrated throughout the day. Number three is to make sure you're not going too long between meals. Number four is to make sure that you are consuming mostly like high volume foods, whole natural nutrient rich foods. I'd say like 90, even 95% of the time we're 5 to 10% of the time you're consuming those lower volume, highly processed foods that are tasty and delicious as well. What are we on? Number 5 now is to make sure that you're doing a better job of managing your stress and not using food to help cope with your stress, and same thing, not using food to cope with your boredom. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do me a favor and smash that thumbs up button. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that alert button so you're notified each time I upload a video. If you know a fellow bro who would benefit from watching today's video, please do me a favor and share it with them. More than anything, I'd love to hear from you down in the comment section below. Share your thoughts, share your insights, share your feedback. Let me know what one resonates most with you and what you do to help control your hunger, reduce your hunger, and make it easier to stick with your diet. Before you go, don't forget to download your free guide, Lose Fat, Get Jacked. Have yourself an amazing day. Catch you in the next video.